Next up, I am very excited to introduce Ann Merchant. She's going to moderate this next panel. We're going to talk about entertainment and the science community. She's currently the Deputy Executive Director for Communications here at the National Academies. Her work primarily revolves around basically creating science communication plans and events, figuring out how to get industry and engineers connected on science programs, and that can be everything from television, film, video games. And she was instrumental in launching the Science and Entertainment Exchange here also at the National Academies. Please make welcome our amazing panel. She's going to introduce the rest of the folks in just a moment. Come on out, guys. There you go.
We're here. We're here.
All right.
Okay, excellent. I know we have places, we were given numbers and exactly where we were supposed to be. But this panel is going to be completely out of control, so don't expect anything to be in an ordered kind of way. So thank you, Janet, for that introduction. And actually, I think, as I said, you guys are already out of control, so only one of you gave me what I think I asked for. So you guys get to introduce yourselves. Oh boy. So I think one of you paid attention to the instructions. But I would like everyone to just say, of course I know where you work, but they don't necessarily know where you work, what your job title is, and then one surprising thing that people probably don't know about you. So Bert, I'm going to let you go first.
Hello there, I'm Bert Ulrich. I work on film and TV collaborations for NASA, and I'm sort of the liaison for the entertainment and the documentary and the film communities and TV communities. And I also am responsible for corporate identity, logo use. And some surprising fact. Actually, I studied international relations, which has absolutely nothing to do with my current job. So that's actually what I did in graduate school. And then I ended up going intergalactic, and so I'm here.
Cool.
Fantastic.
And you're the one who did what I asked you to do, so I already know it, but I'm going to let you do it.
Well, you guys know me, so Janet, now president of Explore Mars and CEO of Janet's Planet, and she wanted to know what was something surprising. So back home, and there's actually an email for, I have to go back on Monday and do this voiceover job, but there's a company in Nashville that does the storyboards for Sesame Street before they actually film them in New York. So I am the voice clone for Abby Cadavi. Hi, Elmo. So that's a job.
That's too cool.
There's a job. I figure it plays well into all the other crazy space things I do, so.
Much better that you did that because I couldn't have done the voice. And Maureen?
So, and I'm sorry I have to follow Janet here, but Maureen O'Brien, I'm a manager for strategic alliances in the Office of Communications at NASA headquarters. So I sort of lead our partnerships activities in the Office of Communication, working on trying to get NASA's message out further by working with partners and doing a lot of public engagement. So I'm never good at these sort of, what's surprising. I'm in my 50s and I play a little volleyball, and last night I'm the coach of my daughter's team, and I was running drills and pulled something in my back. So I almost didn't make it here this morning, but I made it, and so looking forward to the discussion.
If she starts writhing in pain, we
yes.
know why.
Lots of Motrin.
Well, I thought that it was, when I heard you had pulled something in your back, I thought it was that you had, like, the first thing I asked was, well, did you make the score? She said, well, I was coaching. So I did want to say a little bit by way of introduction about the Science and Entertainment Exchange. We have been in business, as it were, since 2008, so for about 10 years. And I know that what people commonly think is that the exchange is about ensuring greater accuracy in film and television. And I think one of the things that we want to talk about here is that it isn't always about the A word, that there are I words that are more important. Things like inspiration and imagination, and even the power of introduction, just by introducing scientists and engineers to people in the entertainment industry, that's a really valuable thing that we can do. And so we've had panels at this conference before where we've we've talked about the interaction between the science and engineering community and the entertainment industry. And I think some of you have probably heard those conversations before, and we've talked with people from the entertainment industry, and we've seen clips, and we wanted to try something a little different this time, because it sort of feels like, well, so what next? Where do we go from here? Because the exchange has been doing this for 10 years, I think we're kind of moving at a pretty good clip, and a lot of us have been doing this for a long time. So what feels like it's next? So I guess I would like to ask all of you, I of course don't think that the A word is the most important thing, but maybe some of you would like to push back on that, or talk about why you might agree with why the I words are the important words. So I want to kind of go down the line and get some reflection on that.
Yeah, I agree, and I partly disagree too, because I think the I word is extremely important, and that's what you go for. But also, on another hand, we deal a lot with historical not documentaries, but also films. And so I can kind of think about, it's been a boon for us, it's been amazing. We've had in 2016, we had The Martian, 2017 Hidden Figures, and 2018 First Man. The latter two were basically historical depictions of people that worked at NASA. And for those ones, we tried to steer it so that we could give all the facts forward to the screenwriters and the directors, and then they could then sort of figure out what they were going to do. And I think for that kind of project, you need that. But for something like Transformers, Dark of the Moon, or something else, that's more inspirational for kids, that is clearly fictional, then we basically open up the candy store and we're less about accuracy and more about inspiration. Mm-hmm. So.
For me, I think it is the imagination and inspiration that leads to innovation. And for kids, one time I had a teacher say something about a little Janet's Planet spot that I had done, and I think that you should have used smaller words, or don't use the word. And I'm like, no. Trajectory, if they don't know it, they can figure out how to spell it, look it up. So I think there's that aspirational quality of let's give you something that makes you want to figure out what the real science might be. And then, what JPL does with Ready, Jet, Go is quite beautiful. In my day, the Jetsons had a spaceship that folded up into a briefcase. Where is that, engineers? Come on, especially in traffic these days. But I think it makes us imagine what can be. And I remember as a kid, and the Jetsons certainly maybe weren't as accurate, although Rosie kind of reminds me of Bixby in some ways, but I think it made me imagine where we can go, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just playing off that, I know a lot of the collaborations that I've been working on over the last couple of years with some of the toy manufacturers, that there's a lot of interest in NASA, which is great, and we love that. But we try to really provide the content and what NASA's working on to these groups as inspiration, and then they take they sort of feed that into the manufacturer of the toy. But then on the side of the kids, they're playing, and so that's where the imagination really comes in. So it's inspired by some of the sort of really what's happening at NASA, but it's also very focused on what is the future, what is the potential future. And so trying to get kids to really imagine what it could be like in the future, and how they can sort of play those stories out and or build, in the case of Lego or other toys, perhaps build what they think the future might be. And so I think the imagination and the inspiration is clearly important in that respect.
And also, and to your guys' points, or your ladies' points, is it's really important to sort of see these sort of when you talk about the Jetsons briefcase, I think this is what inspires kids, and this is what inspires kids to become engineers and scientists and astronauts. And you ask so many people at NASA, Maureen sees this too, why did you work for NASA? Well, because of Star Trek, or because of Star Wars, or because of the Jetsons, or whatever. It's just, these are really inspirational ways of getting out to people, and also sharing and get them interested and curious, which is really, really important. And adults as well.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that those were accurate television
No,
shows.
they certainly weren't.
Right?
No, they certainly weren't.
Yeah.
My point is more with a movie about Neil Armstrong,
Yeah.
because this is probably the new generations of people don't really have any association with Neil Armstrong, and I think you really want to try to get the depiction at least right. The initial script we got for First Man was
made Neil extremely cold, and we knew Neil over the years, and he wasn't this kind of person. So we said, make sure you're okay with the family. Josh Singer was the screenwriter for that, and so he did contact the family. He worked really hard with them, and then he basically honed his characterization, which was really important because you wanted to have it accurate in that situation.
Well, and I think there are certainly issues of human health.
Yeah.
Where I think that those kinds of things make a real difference. You don't want somebody to misunderstand something important about vaccines or about the way in which they can remain healthy. I think there are or how they should behave in a disaster or something of that kind.
Yeah.
But there are some details where I don't think I know that in Miles from Tomorrowland, Randy Wesson pushed back on the flying pancakes. Because they did not obey the laws of gravity. I would say that it probably didn't matter. It was okay. But I know you're trying to say something, Janice.
No. And it's like to the point of the flying pancakes. There's a great quote, and you guys may have heard me say this before, by Tony Wagner of Harvard, who wrote a book called Creating the Innovators of the Future. And it says, we must let our children play, because in the middle of their play, they may find their passion. And in the middle of their passion, they may find their purpose. And so, there's a question I even have about First Man, and somebody from the audience asked me if I knew. There's a place where Neil actually throws a bracelet on the moon.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a true thing? Or was
we
that
don't
a Hollywood?
know.
Oh, okay.
We only know that his sister said something like it could have, that's something Neil would do.
Gotcha.
So I really don't know. You should ask Jim Hansen actually on that. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, Hidden Figures, quite frankly, took 30 years and compressed them in a time period of like a year or whatever for Mercury. And whereas the ladies had a longer association with each other and weren't particularly that palsy, but they knew each other and respected each other a lot. So, I mean, you do have to respect that the people that are making these movies are artists and that they're going to take their artistic license.
So let me
It's
ask
tough.
you, do you think that when they do take artistic license, when you are aware that maybe it's not, it clearly is not right, but it makes a better story and engages
We understand that.
Not only do you understand, do you think it's the right idea? Do you think it's better that they do that?
Ooh, I think it's a balance, and it depends on the subject matter. I can take one example. Jim Green, whom you know, who's our chief scientist and was in charge of Mars at the time of planetary exploration. He worked with Ridley Scott on The Martian, and the storm at the beginning of The Martian is just not accurate. It's not a storm that would really happen. So he said, we'll give you these options, and you guys can do whatever you want in the end. So he said, why not have a lightning storm and have something strike the spacecraft or the lander or whatever. And so basically, they didn't opt for that. They wanted to have the storm because it's dramatic, and we understand that, and that's just the reality of it.
Do you think that the trade-off by having an audience that is probably more engaged and more on the edge of their seat and perhaps more inspired, do you think that that's a trade-off that's worth it?
Yes, I do. I do. I think again, it depends on the specific subject, but yeah, I think it's definitely a trade-off. We used to use a top term called feasible fiction, which we no longer use, quite frankly. I threw it out the window when we did Transformers because it was like, this is not feasible. So it was just like, and so that was my predecessor used that. And it was a good term at the time, I think, and also the mindset that we had. But we're in a different world now. But
is it also, listen, plausible, the world in which the Transformer lives, it is plausible in that world.
I guess so, yeah.
Feasible in that world.
Yeah, it's true. That's how you look at it. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's
I was going to say, we worked with American Girl on the Luciana Girl of the Year last year, and it was a girl who wanted to be the first girl on Mars, basically. And so there was a 3-book series, which is one of the reasons we collaborated. There was a story around it that we thought was a really good opportunity to get girls excited, and their age range was sort of the 8 to 10-year-old girls. And so because it's a 3-book series, we had sort of the space camp was the first book, and there was a lot of robotics, and that was great. And then we had another, like an underwater astronaut training camp was the second, and there was some plant growth and some association with space station we thought was great. And then the third book was actually set down in Atacama Desert in a fictional Mars habitat. And the girls go out with one of the dads to this habitat, and then they're left alone, basically, which, it's supposed to be like a Mars habit or a NASA Mars habitat, but of course we said we would never leave 2 children alone at Mars habitat.
What could go wrong?
So those are the kind of, but then, again, going back to the need for dramatic and, some things happen, some, mishaps and that sort of thing. And so it was something that we said, look, it's, these are, 8 to 10-year-old girls and they need drama. And it's still a great way for girls to get engaged in STEM and get interested in science and space exploration. So.
Yeah, and and also with Hidden Figures, that film, our historian looked at the initial script and he's like, do you really want me to mark this up? And I said, yeah, go to town. And so he did, and he goes, the director's not gonna like this. And I was like, yeah, well, I get that, but at least talk to him and then see. So we called the director, and the director was like, thank you so much for doing this. And then he and Bill Berry, the historian, basically I think they spent 8 hours on that script over a period of like 2 days or something, or 3 days. And they just went through every line. And then Ted went back, Ted Melfi, the director, went back and then resynthesized it. And then, of course, fictionalized it where he needed it for his dramatic purposes.
Yeah, and I think people don't fully appreciate that many times the creators in Hollywood actually do appreciate some of the pushback. They're not adverse to it, but they also need to know that they have the space in which to be entertaining.
Definitely. And go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry to jump in. To me, the point is, it's like, let's create a science literate world. And if we do that through whatever avenue, however that needs to happen, science literacy is on the table. So as we keep that conversation on the table, however we create and innovate and get them enthralled and get them asking the next question, to me, that's the win, right?
So let me ask a question, because we've talked a lot about some of the programs that are inspiring young people and maybe make them interested in becoming a scientist or engineer. I work in a building where I'm surrounded by scientists and engineers. I'm not sure I'd want a whole world populated by scientists and engineers. I can spend, 10 hours a day, but so beyond that, what is it that you hope that these films and these television programs do? If it's not creating a world of scientists and engineers, what is it doing? Science literacy, yes, but what are some of the other goals of entertainment and that inspiration? What does that inspiration lead to?
When I'm working with kids, it's like, I want you to be the technologist and realize that we're in this golden age of technology, the most advanced we'll ever be. So draw it, dream it, dance it, create it, illustrate it. We had a lovely talk by Jancy McPhee yesterday with what she's doing with Sci-Art Exchange. Just lovely stuff about what is your story. And, space will be pretty boring if you don't have like somebody to go da-da-da-da-da-da, and do a funny voice. So you're gonna need crazy people like me to take along, right? But it's like we need those artists and musicians and things, and really adding that art component to say, there's multiple entry points to this space and science game. But I will tell you that I want to give all my scientist and engineer friends props, because I know a lot of you are like artists and musicians. And Ken Davidian, I don't know if you're here, he's like high up at the FAA. He is an expert in French puppetry, people. So I'm telling you that the arts and the sciences do work well together. It worked for so many, it's like, art informs science, science informs art. And I think that's the juncture we're at, and telling that message more and more. Yeah, dream it. And here's the real science, and we'll get to that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, you just took the words out of my mouth at the end. I mean, I think the imagination, and I'm a mother of 2 teenage daughters, and I think, there's so much that's pushed at these kids, and if there's anything that can get them to like dream and of what the world could be like, of what what our future is, and just to dare to dream, I guess. And I think some of these stories can really bring that out in kids, where they say, "Oh, that's somebody I want to be like." It can the hero character is really important, and so I think. Providing those kids those stories and those, ideas to kind of spur them to think about the next thing.
And you're working on a lot of things that are not just children going to those movies, it's a lot of adults.
Yeah.
So what do you think the adults take away from that? Their careers are already set probably.
Doesn't matter. I mean, I just think they get inspired and people get curious. I think we have such a smart population now in this area because honestly, there's so much content out there. We worked on over 174 documentaries last year, and people are thirsty for this, and you have a smarter public, quite frankly, than you had maybe like 30 years ago in some ways, because people are watching this, and there's so many avenues to watch via Netflix or whatever, via streaming or films or TVs or whatever, or podcasts. I mean, people are really engaged in those ways, and I think you have a smarter, a more curious, and a more thirsty audience because of that.
Well, entertainment, I think, Maureen, to your point earlier, entertainment I think we should think of as quite broad. It isn't necessarily just film and television.
Right,
and a lot of
definitely.
what you do, those partnerships go beyond that, right?
Yeah, so an example, we also have worked with Google on some 360 tours. So there's a lot of this sort of the VR and the 360 imagery that is being, implemented in classrooms. So there's a program called Expeditions where it's like classroom tours where it's taking kids out of the classroom, but physically you're still there, but virtually taking them out to experience different places. So we did a Mars tour, and there's a number of other tours, and we profiled some people. They also were interested in profiling careers. So we had around the time Hidden Figures was released, we did a Modern Figures. NASA was profiling our modern figures. And so we did a tour, sort of profiling some women in their workspaces. And so I do think that there's this whole, it's sort of edutainment, and I hear that a lot in the partnerships that come, by me. It's, folks that are really, they're trying to entertain, but they're trying to get some educational value in there too. And so I think there's a lot going on in that space. And NASA provides a lot of great content for that.
Well, and that, of course, the depiction of character, it's a big emphasis for the exchange, and we think a lot about that, and that goes to what you're saying. And I assume that all of us think a lot about that. Certainly Hidden Figures was that moment. I think that Black Panther was another moment. It was certainly a film that we worked on. How much of that is a focus for all of you? And Janet's Planet, that's pretty obvious that you're loud and proud about that.
Yeah.
But that seems like it's
extremely important.
Yeah.
The thing is that it's not only that, it's like, white male, pale scientists and engineers working at NASA. It's embracing everyone, and it's starting to really, really happen. I think you see it when you're at work and when you're at especially certain centers. You really see a diversity there that's starting to develop, which is really exciting.
And how do you engineer, I know Maureen talked about that, but do you engineer ways in which you're trying to introduce the entertainment industry to that diversity at NASA so that they see that in action?
What we do is, like when someone's working on a picture or something like that, and let's say they want to sort of have a general, I'm just trying to think of an example, like The Martian, for instance, we'll have them talk to people, not only men, but also to women and to anyone, to talk about that. And also a lot of ancillary content that we help produce. We don't really produce it, but we're collaborating on. But for instance, Star Wars, when Star Wars came out, one of the Star Wars episodes came out, we highlighted women at NASA with the filmmakers and with Daisy Ridley and other talent. And there are ways to get the word out about NASA and its importance. Again, Maureen was talking about the Modern Figures campaign that we had, and that was really important, where we could highlight people that were working at NASA today that people don't really know about, and the exciting things that they're doing. And you find people that are advocates and that are really interested in talking about what they do, and it really helps us spread the word to people.
I was just going to add on to that. In addition to the Modern Figures campaign was great for showing the diversity at NASA, but also the diversity of careers at NASA. And so really showing it's not just about the astronauts and flight controllers. There's a broad range of really compelling careers here, at NASA. And so we're trying to do a better job also in telling those stories.
Well, it's like I watched a little bit. Have you guys seen James Cameron's Story of Science? And so his episode on science fiction, you have people talking about that once they saw his very diverse team of people in the 60s, and you have Nichelle Nichols portraying this very strong woman in space, and she goes on to work for NASA and recruit NASA candidates, that is the power to me of TV and entertainment. And if you'll indulge me, I'll read this quote from Gene Roddenberry. "If man is to survive, he will have learned how to take delight in the essential differences between men and between cultures. He will learn that differences in ideas and attitudes are a delight, part of life's exciting variety, not something to fear." So to me, he was on the cusp of that, and to see a lot of that vision happening now. Because one of the questions, and one of my proud flag planting moments on Janet's Planet is, if I were to ask you who is the female equivalent of a Neil deGrasse Tyson or a Bill Nye the Science Guy, who would you say? Miss Frizzle, and that's a good one. But it's like that was one of my driving kind of like probably, I guess, the impetus to create Janet's Planet, just to be a female touting science. And so you have Emily Calandrelli, who's doing a lot of the discovery stuff. She's called the Space Gal. Tamara Krinsky with Tomorrow's Science Today, a good friend of mine. So I'm loving all of that kind of forward thinking and that more portrayal. But I think that when we set our sights on that to also work with entertainment and science, that's a good idea.
So, flag planting moments. We don't have a lot of time left, but I'm wondering, when you think about the future, because we started off talking about what's next, where do we go from here? Where would you want to plant your flag next? When you think about the jobs that you're doing and the goals that you have, where do you see this relationship going for you, and what are your aspirations?
Well, the administration just made an announcement that we are going to send a woman and a man to the moon, boots down on the moon, by 2024. And they've just initiated a budget proposal to do that. So I think, and the fact is that they're saying a woman and a man. And I think that's really important. But I just think the idea that we're going back to the moon and then to Mars is something that's going to capture a lot of imaginations in the future. I don't know, Maureen, if you want to add to that at all.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. And, I in my career have had a long association with, women in aerospace. And so I also have a personal passion for that. And so I'm very excited about the goal, and for, trying to get kids, and especially girls, but all kids, more interested in the future of where we're going, because I think it's so important.
And do you see specific ways that you will get the entertainment? I mean, listen, it's probably not going to take much to get the entertainment folks excited about taking a man and a woman to the moon.
Yeah.
On the other hand, are you going to be doing like a big watch party with in LA?
Yeah, we're already getting. I mean, I can't really disclose stuff, but we're already getting stuff.
Come on, we all need our invitations, right?
Yeah, we're already getting. There's like a big project now underway that just happens to fit. I mean, it's serendipitous. Sometimes these things just fall in your lap, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening time-wise. But you get things that sort of fall in your lap. So, and this is a TV series, but anyway, you never know what happens. And I'll be honest with you, social media has propelled us forward in a huge way. I think when Shuttle ended in 2012, I think it was, everyone thought NASA had basically died, that it was irrelevant. The people were asking me, I mean, they were asking you probably too, are you still working at NASA? And we're like, yes, it still exists. There are a lot of other parts of NASA that exist. And I remember, Bill Prady called me from the Big Bang Theory and said, I want to make sure that NASA's relevant. I'm going to build in a character in the TV series, which he did. And Mike Massimino became that character when Howard went up to the International Space Station on that show, which was great. But the other thing that happened was Curiosity happened. And I think that was also in 2012. And when Curiosity happened, we didn't foresee that it was going to be as big as it ended up being. Right. Because of social media, basically, it brought a new relevance to NASA and a new generation of people interested in space exploration, which was really exciting. I think we had an event at Times Square. We were going to have a watch party. It was in the middle of the night. We expected maybe like a couple hundred people to be there. There were like thousands of people there that night, like chanting. And it was like, wow, this is like something's happening. Mm-hmm. And it's really been amazing for us. It's been an amazing journey the last 10 years. So
I mean, I would just add that, I was thinking this morning about, we're coming upon the 50th anniversary of Apollo, and, would it have been the same if there weren't cameras on the lunar spacecraft? Yeah. Would it have spurred entire entrepreneurial efforts and people who wanted to align with Moonshot? if there was something about bringing the public along on that mission that has made it so powerful even to this day. And so to Bert's point, I think we got there a little bit, maybe not quite as big as the Apollo 11, but with the Curiosity mission. So I think to the extent that NASA can invite the public and find ways to really bring folks along with us into these exciting places, that's really where we're gonna, succeed.
Well, and even if it is not a camera that is sitting alongside somebody so that you see it as it's happening or in that realistic way. I mean, I think that's the value of entertainment. If we weren't there to follow those women for the journey during Hidden Figures, but it was dramatized in a way that we could see that story in some ways fictionalized and in some ways realistically, but we could then follow that journey afterwards because a writer and a director and a producer got together and put that package together for us to see that. And I think that's the real value of entertainment. It gives us a window into those lives, and in something that is animated and something completely fantastical, that's another way for us to see those lives. And I think that something like Black Panther was incredible because that gave us a very different view of a society that a lot of people wouldn't have imagined without those writers and that director who put that together for us. So that's, I think, the real value of entertainment. May not always be accurate, but it is absolutely a vision on a world that makes us think about what can be.
Same thing for Avatar. You know what I mean? It's like you had these themes of like George Lucas talks about in that Cameron series where it's like you do have the spaceships, but then you also have the social issues. I mean, think about The Expanse. It's like that against the anti-authoritarian things and which utopia, blah, blah, So it brings to mind we have chances to discuss these racial rifts, culture rifts, et cetera, inside an imaginary space.
Well, and Hidden Figures was a good example of that too.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a social justice story as much as anything else.
Yeah, no, we were all so proud of that film, actually.
Yes, bravo, bravo.
So.
Well, we are about out of time, and I think we should give our panel a big hand.
I should give you a big hand.
Yes.